Why don't I hear this? Oh, music's on. There we go. All right, here we go, boss. From the mountains of central British Columbia to you listening around the world, this, my friends, is Spaced Out Radio. I am your host, Dave Scott, sitting in the captain's chair of SOR headquarters. We welcome you to tonight's show, including Revolution Radio digitally. If you want to take a listen to our archives, they are free at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do old Davey the favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to Bumblefoot and reading up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire. Tonight's show is brought to you by Chive Charities. Help make the world 10% happier by visiting Chive Charities today. You can find them on our website. Self-experimenter and field researcher of ancient technologies and lost history, Jared Murphy has traveled the world searching for evidence of advanced ancestors and high technology. We are getting into the strange and weird tonight, as Jared has a brand new book out called It's Not Aliens, It's Us. And it can only be found online at Amazon, which we highly suggest you do and go check out. Yeah, we're going deep into the ancient side. What did our ancestors know? Were there really aliens hanging out here? Or did they do it themselves and we just lost the technology? Then at the bottom of hour number 3, I will bring you the SOR Newswire, brought to you by Paranoia Magazine. Jared Murphy, welcome to Spaced Out Radio for the first time, man. How are you?
Oh, great. Thank you for having me on.
Oh, we're very glad to have you on, my friend, because, you know, this is a topic that we don't get into, and your theories that you've been able to figure out recently are absolutely phenomenal when it comes to this. But first, let's learn a little bit about you. What got you hot to trot on this topic of going down the whole alien agenda?
Yeah, it's, I think, like, I will date myself and say I'm the child of the 70s, and when you start, when you get Star Wars and Raiders of the Lost Ark right away, it's like, well, okay, can't go to space. It looks really great. I think I'm going to dig up mummies and find the Lost Ark. And then from there, it just, you know, I went down the road of learning a lot about history, but then I thought, you know, it'd be great. Maybe write a fictional story, just knowing what's out there, like the Paracas mummies in Peru. They're just really old. And I thought, well, you know, you got some of the most naturally preserved humans on Earth at 9,000 years. A lot of genetic technology that says we can store memories in our genetic code. In the last 7 years, I thought, well, it would be great to write a fictional story. And I thought, well, that's what I'll do. But truth is always stranger than fiction. And you start looking for components to build a story, and instead you find out that there's biochard engineered soil all over the earth where there's only supposed to be nomadic people. And it just sent me down 3 years of research that got us to where this book is.
Did you believe in aliens before all of this?
I think I grew up with that same exposure. So yeah, I think the idea that we're alone in the universe. I mean, the probability of it, it's so miraculously small that there isn't other life.
Down this path and you start learning a little bit more about what you have, and you've traveled all over the world, looking for your own answers. What were you hoping to find in yourself, that is?
To be honest, I really didn't want to find what I found. There are points where, it's almost like the movie moment where you go, oh my God, I think we really did this to ourselves. We really are a fallen, destroyed, whether it was natural or some other disaster. When you look at the commonalities of the ruins it's everywhere across the earth, and you look at the commonalities of the structural components, construction components, you can't have as many out of place, out of time artifacts and not say, well, boy, if you add up everything you're really looking at, it looks like it's a laptop. Well, if it's a laptop, it's a laptop. It's not a mirror or a necklace or something to slaughter goats on. It's a ancient high piece of technology. And in looking at it, there's so many structures on Earth, and I think the naivety of I think it's not that we're naive. I think it's just that, you look at some of the structures on Earth and we go, okay, well, how else could we have built this unless somebody who had an advanced crane? And well, we know what we would use to lift this 1,000-ton block, and we know what we would have to do to move it, 400 miles or 300 miles, and up and down high, low oxygen terrain in some cases, like in South America, or just long distances from like Baalbek, Lebanon through to Egypt. And we think, well, obviously the jump isn't to say that there was a lost period of human history, despite post-flood histories from the Greeks to the Egyptians and Eastern cultures that point out that, well, there were people here before. But the easier assumption is, well, obviously aliens came. Aliens came and helped us build really big blocks and move really big things, because otherwise we wouldn't have any time to hunt or gather. And why else wouldn't we work with the biggest stones on Earth if, and again, that's just one example, one component. And why would we make them fit so well together or whatever? So the jump to aliens, I think, from going from Victorian England and the Middle Ages through our jumps in technology to get to where we are in a short 100 years with iPads and Androids and where we are with technology, I think it was an easy assumption for people with horse and buggy to go, well, we progressed systematically from loincloth to where we are now. And the explanations today, these period explanations of, well, aliens came in, interceded, and well, we have this split in this DNA. Well, it couldn't have happened unless somebody came and did it, because, well, the only other explanation is we did it. And the only other explanation would be that we were at a higher level of technology than we are now. And it has taken, I think, to where we are now to have the clarity in some of these technologies to look and say, okay, at a certain height, all of this is connected. All of this relates. It's sometimes what's seen as a superhuman ability to the technology of we have an earthquake cloaking wall. And how is that possible? Unless we understood waves and frequencies. And how can we have these genetic differences in the Paracas skulls that Brian Forster did all that work on, just came out with that a year ago, that there's 6 genetic markers that aren't known to humans. These people are in Peru, and they are elongated skulls, and they're born that way. They have one suture line. Their foramen magnum their vascular system that enters their skull is completely different than the human that we know of with a regular skull. These are not people that tribally smash their heads to get an elongated skull. They only have one suture line on the skull. They have a spinal column that enters in a different location, and they're from Crimea. And this isn't on the cover of Smithsonian. It's not talked about. I know it runs in circles now on the web and with other alternative researchers, but you either have to say, okay, well, this technology is something that, well, they crashed. They just came here, and clearly this is a little segment of some alien population, maybe. I mean, in speculation. So how do we come back and say, well, we have that possibility that aliens exist somewhere, someplace, that they may have come here at some point, at some time, or we could say the whole human race is, or we can also say that in our unknown history, based on the evidence that's being found that we can, what we're going to keep dissecting and looking into right now, even, is that a very, very advanced level of understanding happened at one point, or multiple. And here we are with these pieces, and they're so confounding, we label them as out of place, out of time, or some other traveler must have affected this one. Look at this one structure at this one location. We couldn't have gotten it. I mean, obviously the most famous is the Great Pyramid. We like to say, well, it's 1/60th of a second off of north by south by south, because they really, 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 really wanted to get the shadow right at noon. I mean, what are we doing here? It's the complexities and the exact placements are so absurd on so many structures that you have to stop at some point and say, okay, all of this is related to technology that may have needed exact placing, exact placements, and exact coordinates, and whether it was for telecommunication or some other technology. Those are further questions we get to table, but for now it's possible that at any point, no one wants to not, when you see a flying saucer and there's too many respectable, intelligent, really insightful and discerning human beings that have too many sightings and too much to know about what's staring at, they're looking right at it and it's looking back at them, and they can identify the beings that they've seen. And so are they foreign to this planet, or are they our fellow humans? And after some disaster, have they reached this point where they have chosen to continue to develop genetic technology? Right now, we go in for nose jobs. These people, it continue to advance to a point where they may be shaping their bodies. Us, the human race, continued beyond elongated skulls, whether that was a progression or just a subsect. Were some of them small? Were some of them tall? Did they specialize their size and shapes for their tasks at hand? And here we are down this split history where you have survivors that were maybe on the planet, and you have flying saucers or what appears to be a UFO of some kind, and some could be military, and others could be this remnant human race that, whether by design or by choice, they run into us or choose to identify themselves. And again, there are too many people with too many eyewitness accounts to not say, look, I know what I saw. Well, you saw something that doesn't look like us, but the first thing we assume is, well, it's got to be from out of this world. The technology, how they appear. And we take it for granted that maybe we would always want to look human, the way we see ourselves today, when there are actual examples like the Paracas skulls that show we've never been standard. All of our mythologies, everything shows that we could have looked and been anything we could have either dreamt or had a nightmare about.
So, as you look at yourself and the history that you have come to enjoy in learning about, how do you think it ties into ancient races, Egypt, ancient Greece, maybe Atlantis?
Yeah, I think we always have this. There's always that conversation about what does post-flood look like, and then we have these histories like the Anunnaki and the Sumerian cultures, and then we have the Greeks, and we like to look at the Temple of Delphi, and we get often fascinated with, say, the Spartans and the oracles, and the idea that there's this ancient Greek gods that this entire culture is founded on what, at the very foundational level, at the Temple of Delphi, for instance, is polygonal construction. And then you have the dynastic Egyptians talking to Greek philosophers as they come and saying, you Greeks are very old. You don't know how, Eric von Daniken writes about this. And I was able to talk to him a couple times about it, that, the Greeks were told by the ancient Egyptians, well, we have a king's list that goes back 36,000 years. And you Greeks don't know how young you are young now, but you are very old. And these are histories that were written, and in the dynastic Egyptians case and in the Greeks, both credit their lowest foundational structures, which on both sides of that Mediterranean have polygonal construction. And the nodules or the nodes, that we don't know if they've been worn down, if they were part of a superstructure of like maybe a shear strength for like a metamaterial. But you have the dynastic Egyptians and the Greeks coming into an area where it's been priorly devastated by either a natural or a unnatural disaster. And they've adapted the ruins and the buildings they've found, and they've rebuilt them. And sometimes it can be seen in specific technologies. And in the case of, I've already mentioned the Paracas in Peru, you have a group of people who are genetically showing as coming from Crimea. And there's still further genetic research being done, but they look entirely different, and they're in South America. And then you have unknown, or in a Western world, moving to the Indus Valley civilizations and moving east to China and Japan, again, polygonal construction. And genetically, you have these it's very popular to talk Younger Dryas, this getting very well documented and grounded facts that we've had some massive disaster about 12,600 years ago. And you have these cultures and races all in this post-antediluvian time of readapting and moving into these, what we think of as epic societies in the last 5,000 years, Raiders of the Lost Ark and, ancient Egypt and the Greeks moving into the, building these temples. But were they really building them entirely from scratch, or were they mimicking an earlier foundational structure? And you can see the similarities in what's in the ground. And I think when we look at all of it at this post-flood time, it's very romantic to get sucked into, especially in the Western world, with Sumer and the Sumerians and the Anunnaki. And, we have this epic story of Gilgamesh, and it flows into the Bible, and these Anunnaki are here for gold, and they're from planet Nibiru, and there's astrological evidence. There's some very serious, credible research that says that, is there a chance that we're in a binary star system with possibly another sun? Because most planetary life systems that we've identified throughout the galaxy/universe that we can tell could hold life, generally they're binary. They have two stars. And we do a lot of this through radio frequency. And so, people see a picture of a planet, and it's not like we took a snapshot of a planet. We're doing this through radio wave interpretation and saying, well, based on this size and mass and what we're reading, it's this size and mass of a planet or a star or an asteroid or et cetera. And so the idea that this post-flood romanticized idea of, well, we have to look exactly at this myth or this religion of Sumer and say, well, what we get stuck with is, well, look, see here, there's these aliens, and the short story is they enslaved humankind. They adapted them to be slaves, and they needed gold to save their planet. And there's this long history of this mythology. And what we do in research oftentimes is, I think it ties into other, paleoanthropological and archaeological research with just finding facts in the ground. Look for the things you're trying to find, and you find them. And I think it happens even in alternative research, which is to just not accept the face value of, not saying that there is an evolution, but when we look at this then at a flood story and include the Anunnaki as a big center for where we maybe get our alien stories from, is that, well, clearly they came here, they needed gold, and then we go out and search and we find this evidence and we reinforce this theory. Okay, well, could it be, it's aliens and they changed our genes and they made us different, and see, we're different now. But you have to ignore, what were we like pre-antediluvian, pre-flood? How advanced were we to build the structures we built, and why were the Paracas so different? Not just as their example, but why are there other examples of very interesting points within our DNA? And cultural differences aside, these genetic markers are very curious on a lot of different, whether you're from Eurasia or Asia or the Western hemispheres, or what we're discovering, like in Guatemala with the LiDAR scans that to quote the archaeologists from Tikal, with 40,000 structures found that were featured in National Geographic, we've grossly underestimated South American populations, and they've only done 800 square miles of a 5,000 square mile study, and that's just Guatemala. So it appears that we have a history that's so large and big that you can't just take a post-antediluvian one story, or the stories of the Egyptian gods or the stories of the Greek gods, and say, well, there's obviously advanced, out of place, out of time artifacts. And well, here's a mythology, again, written in a post-flood culture, though, which is recent, in the destroyed times, that in the fallen, post-apocalyptic, whatever we went through priorly, that, there's this entire mythology around this other planet, and they needed gold. But we know a lot more about nanotechnology now. We know a lot more about how to actually, we're going to create quantum computing. We've done it. It's going to be in our hands sooner than it took to go from the Apple to our iPads. And you have to consider then that, okay, well, if you can control nanobots that can go into a single cell and manipulate a single strand of DNA, if you're an interdimensional space traveling alien, can put any two atoms together to form or create anything you want. You don't need to go anywhere and mine gold. Now, if you came from another planet and there was just 10 of you and you crashed and your nano building machine is now broken, perhaps you would need to jumpstart it with some gold. But this is a small example of our technology has caught up for us to be able to discern that if you are traveling great distances in space, you have to have control of subatomic particles. If you can build in a 3D printer anything you can dream of or think of, you don't need to travel to another planet to obtain gold. So we can start breaking down these post-flood myths and start appreciating them for the cultures that developed these mythologies, whether it's the Greeks, whether it's Sumer, or whether it's the Indus Valley cultures, which we're only, in a Western standpoint, starting to understand more, and that they are, again, another place where they're super organized, perfectly laid out streets, north by north, south by south, all to the cardinal points, and very well laid out. But these people were just getting to understand them in the Western side, and it's great to appreciate anybody who creates 1,000 years of history. We should appreciate that. But what are we trying to get to? Why are we fighting? Why are we walking around? And I think I have to give Graham Hancock credit for the phrase of "we're a species with amnesia." I think it's a great way to really look at it. Why do we know there's just something that's missing, and that's just right out of our tips of our tongue? And this is one of those cases where if we drop and stop relating to our history from our post-flood mythologies and just look at the facts of what we're finding genetically. Yeah.
I'm going to get you to hold on right there, Jared, because we're going to go to break here at the bottom of the hour. Jared Murphy is our guest tonight. His latest book, It's Not Aliens, Worse, It's Us, Discovering Our Lost History. Next, let's go back in time with Jared Murphy on Spaced Out Radio. Awesome. Awesome. So we're still live on YouTube here through the breaks, and they can hear us. So let's just, be nice and cordial, because the YouTube crowd, they're kind of sensitive that way. I'm saying that very sarcastically.
Well, then, what do we give the YouTube crowd? Like, they have to have the bonus material, right?
Absolutely. They got to have the bonus material. That's what they get.
Well, then they get. Isn't this where we stop and quick talk about this photo you just got?
Yeah. My buddy Merle doesn't believe it's real, but I'll be chatting with him about that. But we'll show it later. I took it off so that way they could see your advertisement for your book. I think that was a little bit more important.
Oh, great. Well, I am working on the audio portion. That there will be an audio book out.
Very nice.
It just takes a little while to record that with over 300 pages.
Right on. Let's give a shout out to some people. Mr. Knievel hanging out for the first time here. Thank you so much. D. McKenna, good to have you here. Nixa, thank you for coming on in. Greco, I hope you have a good chicken souvlaki for me tonight, because I am a little bit hungry. Corrence, the booking agent. How are you tonight, my friend? Good old Corrence. He does all my booking. Who else we got in here that we got? Justin, thanks for coming on back. Poetically Mistaken, little Ronnie J. Good to have you here. Justin, Good Earth, thank you for coming on in tonight, man. And we got little Marky Spender in there. Jockery, how you doing? He says, hey, Jared.
Hey.
And let's see here. What else we got here? Or who else, I should say. Eugene Braxton, love you, brother. You're awesome. Cable Guy Matt. Hey, Cable Guy Matt. Television right now.
Nice.
And that is truthful. I've seen the photo. It is truthful. Waylon is here. All right. I think we're caught up in saying hello. Oh, Lisa Marie, Redheaded Lisa, Treehouse. Good to have you here. Roy Boy, Fapster, how you doing, man? Maureen, thank you for coming on in. Dirty Filth. By the way, you better send that latest cartoon to Butch Witkowski, man. That is fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. Yeah, I think we're caught up now. Bimba, how are you? Phenom, Admiral Nelson, Space Cadet, Jason McDaniel. Yeah, we're caught up now, I believe. We're caught up. Oh, Human Carl's here. Human Carl just arrived. We can start the show now. How you doing, Human Carl? Love you, man. K.A., good to have you here. I always like to give a shout out to the people listening in.
Oh, I think it's
Cable
great.
Guy Matt. Yeah, Cable Guy Matt says my head is like 5 feet across on his screen right now. Oh, dude, I'm way too ugly for your television, man. I never want to see that. Never want to see that.
Like Christmas gift ideas.
Yeah. Hey, Science Bob, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Science Bob, for taking part in the super chat. Was that you, Science Bob, or was that Science Bob's beard? Because they're two separate entities right now. You know? Chuckles, what's going on? All right. We got about 2.5 minutes here. 2.5 minutes.
That's, I think that's long enough for us to cover a couple things, but we got to stay general, right?
Absolutely. Well,
I'm trying to picture your head across a 100 plus inch screen. Your face
181 inch. 181 inch. That's 18 feet, man. Almost 18 feet of television.
I feel like there's a screen on that. You should be able to watch more than one show, right?
I don't know. Cable Guy Matt has never invited me over to see it yet. It's kind of hard right now.
There's no room.
Hey, Chuck Obo, how are you? Yeah, he only has one seat in his basement, and that's for him.
Well, it's not a hint.
Exactly. By the way, to our YouTube listeners, all of April, we are going to be giving out Cable Guy Matt pieces of coaxial cable that he will autograph just for you. Just for you. Now, of course, you do have to pay for shipping and handling on that, but Cable Guy Matt will sign you an autograph right there. Your own personal piece of Cable Guy Matt coaxial cable. Free.
I think it'd be cool if you did shapes.
Yeah, that would be kind of cool. Wonder if he could do shapes. I bet you could.
I mean, you get some bend with a coax. You could, I'm not saying balloon animals, but.
Yeah. I agree. All right. We got about 20 seconds here, 20 to 30 seconds here. And, all right. Thank you to Super Bob and Science Bob for doing the super chat there. And you can also head to our website, spacedoutradio.com, to hang on out with us. And what you want to do there is you want to go to the SOR Vault. We got some great T-shirts and everything there for you. And, you know, it's a good way to support what we do. It's a good way. I don't know why, but it just is. Oh, Cable Guy Matt says he could make you a giraffe, Jared.
Oh, nice. I'll take that. It's got a long neck.
And a Bigfoot. He's into it. He's ready. All right, here we go. Second half hour coming up. Welcome back to the second half hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott, sitting in the captain's chair of SOR headquarters. Thank you so much for joining us. I want to remind all of you that if you missed portions of this show or others, you can check out our free archives at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Just do me the favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including Rocking Out to Bumblefoot and reading up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire. Tonight we are talking with author Jared Murphy. He's got a brand new book out that I think you should check out. It's not aliens, worse, it's us. And we're going back in time right now to try and figure out what the heck is going on. Jared, welcome back.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, no problem. That's kind of what we do around here. You know, it's a lot of fun. I want to ask you, in the previous hour, you mentioned that there was a big changeover about 12,000 years ago. What do you think happened?
Oh, it's interesting. I think, the couple theories currently are, well, obviously Greenland, we find that huge crater in Greenland, 19-mile diameter, possibly 700 megaton bomb equivalent, taking out Greenland. And then there's the general theory that because there's so many clear worldwide flood stories, that there was a flood that affected the world. And is it sourced from an impact, or was it the ending due to, is there possibly the sun flare theory, the idea of sun plasma, that there was some solar flare that affected the planet. It was so great that it either burned directly and the basically ice shelves melted. I mean, there's a few different theories that what caused this sudden rise in sea level, and I think there's a couple interesting points about this. One is why. To directly answer the question, what if it is that there was already a prior event, and that whatever happened 12,600 or so, it either gets rounded up to 13 or rounded down to 12, but either way, approximately 12,600 years ago, we have this worldwide disaster. Is it really an aftershock of a prior event, and it's the remnants of that event from maybe 50 or 80 or 100,000 years ago, or was it a new event? And part of the problem with answering the question is Egypt. I think a lot of great points have been made by a lot of great researchers that you take Tanis, the former capital of Egypt, and it shows a lot of sign of, well, there's a lot of locations around the world that show signs of vitrification of stone that has been irregularly heated, and then it cools off and it becomes brittle. It doesn't have the personality of the stone as it should have, and it becomes either flaky, brittle. It's clear that depending on the location on Earth, that if there had been an impact or a solar flare with an extreme amount of plasma, that it would have been really easy to maybe possibly create enough heat to have vitrified and obliterated whole cities, including Tanis and other locations, whether in Greece, Egypt, or South America, wherever. Part of the problem with proving that part out is, well, we just haven't created access to all the incredible sites that we're finding just with LIDAR and the other scanning methods. So we don't have enough data sets to say, okay, well, it's clear that this stone was vitrified, but was it weaponized? Was it a actual impact from an asteroid? Was it massive, like in Greenland? Was it this 700 megaton explosion with a wall of fire, and it just vitrified and obliterated, 1,000-ton statues and whole cities and just evaporated people? Or was it a weaponized incident of a clash between cultures? And then, a lot of water rose really quickly. And so there's a theory of, would an impact also affect plates? Our theoretical tectonic shifting. Did some things go up, some things go down? Did also a wall of water? How did we end up with Lake Titicaca in the Andes? How did we end up with a lake, one of the highest lakes on Earth at 12,000 feet-ish, with seahorses? Was it at one point lower and ocean level, or what we would have identified, or was it higher? And part of answering this question goes into that city that's off of the coast of Cuba, and I do mention it in my book. A couple people were given permission by the Cuban government approximately 14 years ago to look for Spanish galleons, and they see an anomaly, and they find what very much appears to be a city off the coast of Cuba, 2,300 feet deep. And this ties into what happened 12,600 years ago, because even 8,000 years ago, you have Doggerland or whatever you want to, it's well established in mainstream archaeology or geology that from Scotland all the way to France was one continent. You have rivers and valleys that have just disappeared. What we identify as Ireland, Scotland, and England and France was one area. Even you can see maps of this. It's very difficult to find this, but there are maps of this even to 8,000 years ago. So we're talking very much past this massive disaster. And there's a lot of evidence saying North Africa, even to 5,000 BC, was a tropical paradise, the whole northern section, that it became arid only in the last 4.5 to 4,900 years. So backing up to this city off of the coast of Cuba, it's at 2,300 feet or 1,700 meters deep. And irrelevant to plate tectonics, we know enough about our geology to say this city could have only been above water 50,000 years ago. So what did the coastlines look like 50,000 years ago, pre-flood 12,600 years ago? Where the heck was our planet at 50,000? And here's the thing, it's not like when you look at, you can very quickly do a search, sunken city off the coast of Cuba, and you'll see the picture of it. The best that I can tell you for current information is National Geographic bought the rights to the story, and nothing's been done with it for 14 years. And you don't even have to dig for a conspiracy on this one. it's pretty exciting. It's not easy to find and then try to video a city at 2,300 feet deep. There's a lot of logistical issues, but you would think that a city like this would become front and center news when it can't be the only one. So if you try digging and finding obvious maps, it took me 2 years with a cartographer and an illustrator, brilliant illustrator, to come up with what did the world look like at 50,000 years ago. And it's not like they dusted off their hands and went, well, we're ready for the next disaster, and then this city got sunk. The last time it was above ground is approximately 50,000 years ago. So how long was it established prior to that? And then what does the global footprint look like? If you look at a map now, which I've put it throughout my book, of what's our coastlines, what is the world we're living in, where are people living on the beach? If your beach was Las Vegas, Nevada, and your East Coast beach in the United States was Ohio, and mid through the Carolinas and Tennessee and Kentucky, and there was no Florida, you would have a very different story to tell in 50,000 years if there was no New York and no LA and no Miami. And it would look very different, at least in the United States. So when you have, I had to go back further from this last disaster and go, okay, where were we as a culture, as humanity goes? Like, we know this city's there. There are pictures of this city there. It was found. It was written about. There are stories. It's 14 years ago. This is old news. So how many other cities, if we're looking for a true timeline to humanity, we not only have to say, well, there's this, the city of Alexandria. Well, we know the Egyptians. We know the Greeks had cities a few hundred, they're a few hundred feet deep now. No, we're talking, where did Doggerland go? Where did all these rivers and valleys that represented King Arthur, Merlin, and magic from from the edge of Scotland to all the way to France? This geology looked entirely different and was still very much there 8,000 years ago. Yet over 50,000 years ago, the Mediterranean was basically a lake. The Caribbean was basically a lake. And again, you have indigenous societies in that Cuban area, and their flood myth from 12,600 years ago, at least we think it's that disaster in tying in ancient cultures around the world. They have a story that one day the land flooded and they were left with islands and lots of fish. It's a very positive spin on having a disaster take out the known world for these indigenous people in this particular area in South America, or in the Central American region, that you can't not just account for this one city off of Cuba. You now have to look at New Zealandia off of Australia, where that was a continent. It was many, many times larger than what is left now of this little sliver of New Zealand. Again, this is established, known information about where there's agreement that New Zealandia was a above water area, and so was most of Indonesia, connected with pretty much you could walk to Australia, and all these coastlines looked very differently. And so if we start saying, okay, we have again a very skewed snapshot of our history, and we keep pressing this story that we've grown up with, that the coastlines we're looking at right now is basically where they were for all of either advanced ancient technology or loinclothers and bark eaters, that we have a coastline snapshot of our history, but we don't. And you have a nail in a coffin, a massive white elephant in a room with just this one city off of Cuba at its depth, showing that it had to have been established, which means, what are we doing with history 100,000 years ago? And are we looking in those places? Are we in those portions of the ocean? Are we looking at the sands? For years, it's been said over 90% of Egypt is in the sand. Well, we know that from Sarah Park, the Global Explorer program. Sarah Parcak did the Global Explorer. She won the TED Talk a few years ago for using satellites to image sand. She found pyramids that Egyptologists didn't want to acknowledge. She found whole cityscapes. I mean, she won the TED Prize for it. And it's because the majority of what we need to look at to tell our true story is either buried in sand, buried in areas we said were nomadic, or under the water in an area that is so significantly further away. We're telling ourselves the story of, for say, Tanis and this vitrification. And was it this disaster 12,600 years ago, or was there something further back? Is the actual timeline for an advanced human culture somewhere between, 50 and 100,000 years ago? And how big was this global culture? Because one of the first things that I stumbled on was engineered soil. And when you have engineered soil, and what that is it's not a matter of there was a forest fire and then some dinosaurs died and they created compost and then there's a lot of black earth. There is something called in South America and Latin America, it's called terra preta. It's Portuguese. And what they found was that what was that?
No, I just said right. I was listening in. Just wanted to make you know I was still here.
I'm so sorry. I should stop talking, right? At this point, how would I catch your breath?
I did want to ask a quick question. What about off the coast of Bimini, where they believe that might have been where Atlantis was, and there is these stone roads that are underneath the ocean that seem pretty darn interesting.
Well, they pretty much walk right. And I think that when you look at the timeline, the beauty of us in our modern time is, and in even my lifetime, I think that's the beauty of this story, our imagination of what we started with is we're told of this one advanced city, and we can get our heads around that. It was a great story. It's part of the Greeks. It's part of our modern mythology of this idea of this one advanced city. But I think it's being well established with all these great researchers that the technology on every continent is showing a level of sophistication that is so far beyond our current comprehension and or abilities to even, we look at single blocks and stones and say we have a couple cranes that can lift these and we can lift them straight up and down and we can only do it a few feet, and these people are cutting and moving with impunity 100,000, 800 ton, and they're not just cutting stones, they're shaping them and melting them and agitating them in place where they're touching on every side. And Atlantis is this idea, this crowning capstone on this concept that it was just this one group of, is it possible that a highly ancient advanced society ended up bunkering down? And was it 100? Was it 50? Did they survive for a few days? Did they survive this massive natural disaster? And then did they come out and then they're like, well, we rebuilt one city. And this Bimini Road and these other underwater especially with that Cuban pyramid structure city where it is. And again, the Guatemalan LiDAR scans are just one place where we're establishing that many, many more millions of people lived in some post-antediluvian, post-disaster. They were able to walk in to super highways and roads and build and add on to pre-existing societies, which include that road that's underwater there. And it absolutely, I think actually Jimmy from Bright Insight, I do not know him personally, but I think he nailed it when he did, and I know Brian Forster was interested in it too, is that I think Bright Insight nailed it when he pointed out the maps of the known world that the Greeks knew and the Eye of Africa and the rings of the Eye of Africa. And even if you account for plate shifting and everything else, it's like, well, the reason Eye of Africa was ruled out as Atlantis was because of its height. And of course, the taboo is, and Michael Cramo, Forbidden Archaeology, points this out too. If you, God forbid, you mention the word Atlantis and people don't want to touch you or talk to you or take you seriously as a researcher, but the idea that Atlantis is really a representative statement of a lost ancient high technology society, whether single or global in unity or global and separate, like we look at modern countries now. There was a global society because anyone who's ever done construction or engineering, you cannot look at the structures that are on every planet, on every part of the planet, and not say that these are not similar. They're almost identical, if not identical, on every continent. So at some point in our post-flood cultures, do we know about this city called Atlantis? Yeah, and we know about it through a lot of secondhand story through the Greeks. But the Eye of Africa and the map of the known world for the Greeks, from what it looks like, I guess, yeah, it's an interesting thing that got romanticized for me as a kid, and I do think the Eye of Africa fits the description, and based on what's being found there even already, despite it being in a very high area conflict zone and very little is studied about it because of its location and the danger in getting there. I think that's what that was. But the Bimini Road, the city off of Cuba, the stuff being found everywhere else, even off of Japan. And of course, I mean, it was Graham Hancock digging off of the coast of India in the 90s in those documentaries where you have stories in India about, well, everyone here who lives in this part of the coast is, well, we're here because there was a flood. And well, guess what? 30, 50,000 years ago, they did live 100 miles the other direction. And there's superstructures there. And yeah, the currents are bad. Underwater is not glorious. It's highly dangerous work. And unfortunately, all of our best archaeological evidence is laying at the bottom of some really badass oceans with needing of some really badass people to go dig it up. Well, sink it up, float it up. I don't know.
We got about 3 minutes here before we got to go to break at the top of the hour. Jared Murphy is our guest tonight. When you advanced society going back 12,000 years ago, what kind of society are you talking about? I mean, for all we know, I mean, creating fire was high advancement back then.
Yeah, and it's interesting. Like on one hand, it's you have post-flood surviving tribes and cultures that it looks like the dynastic Egyptians were that group. They came into a destroyed city, metropolis area, and they mimicked what was there. And then advanced is looking at the very structures these cultures occupied, just like the Incans said to the Spaniards, who built this? And they said the gods built this. And you can't, again, with any construction or engineering background, you can't look at a structure with 50, 80,000 ton polygonal, which means very intricately cut. Everyone walks up to these polygonal constructions, and one of the things they point out is you can't put a pin or you can't put a piece of paper between them. And studies have been done. These are structures that can withstand earthquakes. So we're talking about structures that have been engineered to intentionally mute and stop frequency, massive, like you could stand in a building and not know there was a 9 Richter scale earthquake. And that is really highly advanced technology to understand where you are geographically on the earth, how deep and at what location an earthquake originates from, because it's based on tectonic plate shifting, that a culture was able to build the structure, which is likely a foundational structure, to a building that was able to withstand this. And the part that we can wait and talk about after the break is the foundations themselves. We're looking up or we're looking at the walls, but the foundations of these structures, including engineered soil, is the point. These people engineered the soil that they were using beyond what we can do today. That's just some of it.
So with that, as we got about 45 seconds to go here, with that, does that mean that, they had electronic advancements that we just don't know about or have been covered over by, years and years of dirt and sediment?
Oh, absolutely. I think it's both. We have, there's plating technology. I think as society declined, there's plating technology on things that have been found from Sumer to the Middle East, where it's plated so thin, it's at a nanoscale that we can't match. Our phone technology and the digital equipment we're using doesn't use plating that thin, and they were using it to make pretty gold altars and stuff, and we don't know how to do it. That's just one example, and that's post-flood.
All right. Right there, we're going to cut you off because we got to go to break at the top of the hour. Learning more about this past technology. How advanced were societies way back when? way back when. We're going to get into it with Jared Murphy. His book that we're chatting about tonight, all about aliens, man. What is that humming sound? I have no idea what that sound is. So you got a train going on there?
Oh, well. Welcome, yes.
That's okay.
I just had a train go by.
Hour 2, next. That is awesome. That is awesome.
I'm sitting...
a train go by.
Yeah, I'm sitting 15 feet off of train tracks right now, and they have been very kind to me tonight. There's this is the first one in a while, but yeah, I'm in Minneapolis, St. Paul, and so the main train yards are about 9 miles long. So sorry.
No, hey, that works for me. I like trains. All right. Hey, I will. I'm just going to turn the commercials back on, give your voice a little bit of a break here. I got to run my dogs outside. Okay. I'll be right back.
Sounds good.
All right, I am back. There we go. My dog decided to join us. Hey, everybody on YouTube. Hope you're enjoying tonight's show with Jared Murphy. We're having a lot of fun tonight, man. I'm learning a lot. Thank you.
You're welcome.
No worries.
What kind of dog?
Well, I have two dogs. I have a purebred German Shepherd. He's pure black. And I have a mixed Shepherd cross.
I used to have a white one. He was great.
Nice dogs.
Definitely could see that.
Very nice dogs.
Yeah. You have no shedding problems, right?
Yeah, right. I have to sweep my floor twice a day.
Well, just got to wonder where the rabbit went.
Well, the one dog killed the rabbit.
Oh.
Yeah, it gave the rabbit a heart attack, unfortunately. But
puppy.
What do you do? What do you do?
They are smart dogs, though. They're great dogs.
Oh, yeah. Brilliant. I'll tell you, very protective. Very protective.
Yeah, they yeah.
All right. We got about 2.5 minutes here.
Oh, all right, great. Oh, your break the dogs went fast.
Yeah, well, the one guy is asleep, so he goes to bed when my little guy goes to bed. And the other one, he comes into the studio and comes to work. So his work is laying down on the floor and listening.
I was going to say, does he pay attention? Does he just perk his ears up every now and then and you can tell he's listening?
Oh, no, he doesn't care. He's too old to care.
Oh, great stage. That's the only trick then, eating and sleeping?
Yeah. Yeah, he's a good dude, though. He's a good dude.
And well, he has some really good country to run around in. You're in a beautiful place. Unless, how long have you been in that area?
I've been up here since August of 2015. I really enjoy it up here.
Yeah, how's winter going?
It won't end. It won't end. It got warm last week, and then to start off this week, it decided to snow, and now we're into frigid, freezing temperatures again. The damn winter will not end here. It's getting ridiculous.
Yeah,
I'm getting mad.
No, that's
yeah.
We broke records. I think last year it was actual temperatures were over 30 below, and wind chill put it closer to like.
Here we
50.
go. 1 second here. Here we go. Music's on. Hour number 2 of Spaced Out Radio is underway tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott. Thank you so much for joining on in wherever you may be. Hope you're all sitting nice, cozy, and tight. We want to say welcome to every one of our terrestrial affiliates tuning us on in tonight, along with our digital side of Revolution Radio. Remember, you can check out all of our archives for free at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Just do old Davey the favor, hit that subscribe button. The Desert Clam has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Katzenjammer. Katzenjammer is your password. Use it wisely. Space Travelers, as the Clam sets a password each and every night right here on Spaced Out Radio. Our website is spacedoutradio.com. We got a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to Bumblefoot and reading up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire and so much more. Tonight we are talking about ancient technologies with the author, Jared Murphy, his latest book, and I highly suggest you go on and get it because it is a good one. It's not aliens, worse. It's us. Scary times, man. Scary, scary times as we look forward to it. Jared, how's the train, man? How's the train?
Ironic, you're just back in time for a new one, which now is almost done. It's almost gone.
Oh, there you go. I can't hear it anymore. I can't hear it. That's good stuff, man. You know what? I rarely hear a train around here. Rarely, and I miss it. I also miss the fact that way up here, we rarely get airplanes flying over. Like, any type of aircraft.
Huh.
Haven't even seen a good UFO recently, man. But anyways, let's get to ancient technology here, because right before the break we were talking about how you believe past civilizations going back 12, 14,000 dollars, 14,000 years ago, there was a lot of advancement that was out there. What leads you to believe that they had technologies? Because, archaeologically speaking, we haven't found a lot of those or what they had.
Well, it's funny because we look up, and like I said, the polygonal construction is significant. So what we're talking about is whether you're in Tiwanaku or Ollantaytambo or Egypt, the Great Pyramid itself, Baalbek, Lebanon, the Emperor's Palace in Japan to Cambodia, the polygonal construction and keystone cuts, which have been featured from Ancient Aliens to just every researcher at it right now, is pointing out that you have these, whether they're a few tons or whether they're 1,000 tons or 1,200 tons, or there's a location in Siberia that's showing to be over 3,000 tons, you have these blocks that can fit together with not even a piece of paper that go between them. And it's not just that they're tightly, I've done historical remodeling for 20 years, and it's one thing to cut two boards together and have them fit really tight on the front, and you go, well, that looks really nicely finished, and the boards seem to come together. But then on the backside, you'll look and you'll see that, well, the one cut was a little more than 45, or the blade took just a little too much off. But we're talking about the hardest stones on Earth at each layer of the society that we're crediting to these constructions, whether it's the Inca or whether it's in Cambodia or in Egypt. We're crediting these dynastic, post-antediluvian peoples with building these structures of the hardest stones on Earth, with frequently hundreds or thousands or many, feet above sea level. Distances from where they were quarried to where they were placed, and in fitting them together, they don't just fit on the front, they fit on every side, in every way, and in areas where they're so old that they've weathered away those joineries. When they were together, or when they are together, they mute earthquakes because they are set together with no mortar. They fit it's like maybe like putting your arm or your knee to your thigh, where your skin just folds together perfectly. These stones are fit together in a way that not one mason in 1,000 years would waste the time. They cut square blocks, they stack them. If they don't fit, you add mortar. This is not how these are constructed. And it would be fancy and interesting if they just built it really close and tight, and they just really were bored, and they were all attention. They just had OCD, and they were just polishing and taking off every 800-ton stone that has, maybe sometimes they're not just four-sided, they're some of them are 8 or 10. They're just so intricately cut and pinned together in a way that causes them to just mute, whether it be an earthquake or now getting into the foundational structure, which I never wanted to look into ancient megalithic history. I got to be honest with you. I wanted to find mummies. Like I said at the beginning, I wanted to find the lost Ark of the Covenant. I wanted to be Indiana Jones. I didn't want to talk and find out that there's engineered soil from Canada to Siberia called Chernozems. And in Latin America and in Africa and in Australia, there is terra preta. And it's soil that isn't not only the best for growing food, but it's also good for filtering carbon dioxide. It's also good for filtering heavy metals and pesticides or fertilizers. And we're talking engineered soil that has to be created. And it's, again, in areas that we're saying there was just nomadic people. And then we have to account for North Africa being a giant desert, and a number of other deserts around the world that may not have been deserts when this soil appears up everywhere. We're talking about highly nutrient-rich soil that has been looked at by soil scientists for 100 years, and we cannot recreate. We have modern biochars that we create from either a food or an organic product. We have mimics, but the ancient soils that in some locations are 15, 20 feet thick and go on for many, many, many square kilometers or miles, depending on where you're from. And we don't know how to recreate it. So foundationally, we have to start and say, where's our technologies that we're looking at? Because we're frequently looking up or for the iPad or the laptop. And what we're not looking at is submicron, boring as hell. You need a microscope and a bunch of other electroscopy, just really complex machines to look at dust and say, this is not a normal dust. This has been engineered and placed here by a people. And then we have not just the foundation under a building, we have this polygonal construction with these keystone cuts in stones that aren't just stones, they're quartzites, they're basalts, they're highly complex stones that it sure seems like there would be an energy or a communication or a wave and frequency component beyond the technology of earthquakes. So what else is there? And then we come to stone spheres. And starting in Costa Rica, there were some banana plantations that were opening up. And in the 1920s, they started finding stone spheres. What are we talking about? We're talking about giant stone balls, whether they are, some of them are the size of golf balls that they found. A lot of people don't know that. They think that there's just these giant couple ton, 4 ton, 10 ton. In Bosnia, they found a 64 ton one. They've been found in Finland and Sweden. They're found in Russia. They're found in the Arctic Circle. But these giant stone spheres, one of the theories was, well, volcanoes back in the day threw up a lot of material, hot material into the air, and they spun and spun and spun, and they magically created very smooth concretions. And that's what they called them. These weren't carved stone spheres. They were concretions. And the other thing is, it's pointed out that they're perfectly round. Well, some of them, and then it's pointed out, well, they're not all perfectly round. Well, if you start to understand frequencies and wave technology, and this is where it gets more and more interesting, we have nanoplating that we're seeing being done. Why would anyone need a nanoplate down to one layer, a gold-plated pitcher of something in Sumer, unless it's a descending technology? Why? Again, we're seeing the polygonal construction. Now here's these stone spheres that also relate to earthquake and muting control, because just in April of 2019, and they had already been, these group of researchers in France had already published on some other points that they couldn't help but notice that Greco-Roman amphitheaters, that the foundational footings were placed in such a way that if, again, hit by an earthquake, the structure of these buildings and these amphitheaters exactly dampen and mute earthquakes. But here we have these giant stone spheres of different shapes and sizes, not exactly perfectly round, and you won't believe it, but in the 40s, the first and only 2 people that looked at this, the lead researcher's last name, no joke, first and last name, Doris Stone, started in Costa Rica looking at these stone spheres, and they only looked at them for 4 years, and they were only recently protected as a World Heritage, as one of these World Heritage mystery things. But they were found all over Costa Rica. They were found in California. They're found in New Zealand. They're found in the Arctic Circle. They're found all over the earth. And what these researchers found in April of 2019, what they published on, was that in the role of nanophonics, in the role of metamaterials in megastructures for earthquake control, their interest is creating things that make tall buildings and everything safer, and you don't have to worry about your family being in some off the Richter scale earthquake. Is that these stone spheres, what they experimented with were concrete about a meter by meter by meter. And what they did was they placed them at various levels in the earth, and they found that they act as wave resonators. So they could do 2 things. They could do a lot of things. One, they could mute an incoming wave, we're just going over this quick, or they could maybe enhance a different frequency or wave. But what they found was that if you place these spheres of various sizes and shapes and cuts, and they were using concrete, but the spheres that are found all over the earth are made out of different materials. And if you place them under city structures, not one single building, but whole infrastructures, that a series of stone balls would mute or cancel and save and keep safe a population that would be above it. And what they found was that you could use columns, trees, and soil, and you could change the density and the structure of the soil itself to, again, either mute or enhance the communication of a wave or frequency. And that was a side note, by the way, to back up for terra preta, is that there are electromagnetic properties with terra preta that everyone goes, oh, isn't that neat or interesting? But it's not sexy like finding a mummy in a tomb. But what we have is, starting with the soil itself, starting with something that I don't think anyone saw coming, massive amounts of engineered soil all over the earth with stone balls and polygonal construction staring right at us, showing that these people knew what frequency and wave to tune every building they built with impunity of the size of the stone or the hardness of it, cutting it and shaping it and placing it. And now what would happen in 50,000 years with a building that had a plastic or glass or metal exterior? I mean, we have Model Ts in America that are melting away where they sit and have been at farms all over Minnesota, or old cars that have rusted away where there's not much left. What would happen in 50,000 years? What would be left other than the stone itself? And the part of the testament is the longevity of this stone, but what's missing is the eyes on the comprehension of the technology that would be related to muting on one layer of technology an earthquake. But then you're growing soil, you're creating soil that can grow the most nutrient dense food on the planet. It's renewing itself basically, and on top of it, it's filtering heavy metals and carbon dioxide. The missing component in a lot of the research, which I quote quite a bit of the research about it. You can go down this rabbit hole, but the idea that these structures were built on foundations that were just meant to stay level is a simplification of how deep are these structures. Like Ollantaytambo, Tambo, every now and then it'll be stopped and people will, there's an 800-ton stone, this is in South America, and people will stop at these multi-layered stones and they'll say, look at the complexity or the size of the structure, but it's rarely pointed out that the structures are over 40 feet deep. It's almost never pointed out that the Great Pyramid of Egypt, that the Giza Plateau, first off, isn't just the Great Pyramid, which is, again, 8-sided. We're going back to frequency and wave technology. So is Menkaure. The end pyramids are 8-sided pyramids. What would an 8-sided structure look like? You don't draw that. Nobody talk. We develop develop the aeroplane. We fly over the Great Pyramid. It's the pictures taken that with the sun in the right direction, and you can Google and everyone can go look at this or Bing it or whatever you want to support. The reality is that 2 of the 3 pyramids that are there, and it's known that there was, like ancient architects points out, that there were drawings that there was a 4th pyramid, and there may have been more, but again, you have like in any remodel, any 100-year-old, now we're talking about a society that's been around 12,000 years, they're going to rob from Peter to pay Paul when it comes to building a structure. A structure may fall out of use. They may have changed it or destroyed it. But what they didn't do was change the foundation that these buildings are sitting on. And the reality is that when you look down, some of those blocks, like at Baalbek, they could be 1,200. Some of the estimates are over 1,100 tons or 1,200 tons. And again, oh, it's really impressive. The weight's really big. It's not the weight. It's that when you look down at some points near the Great Pyramid, there are foundational stones, these, again, polygonal, cymatic, controlling waves and frequencies, cymatic polygonal stones that are foundational to this pyramid structures that have little tiny curves that almost tip around your finger. They're almost like feathered curves. So the blocks are all interlocking and they're touching on all sides. And we don't go look at a foundation and go, let's go figure out how much they pre-compacted the soil under the foundational wall. Let's look at what components they use. Because according to this paper from 2019, it could be nanostructures and material. So that's just the basis of the technology that we're talking about. We're saying we don't see because we didn't even have the technology until recently to say, hey, this looks like a wave frequency resonator. Instead, it was a giant stone ball that people laughed at the idea that it was a concretion because at different periods in Central America and in Bosnia and in some other locations, these stone spheres, including in New Zealand, they were dynamited or cracked open because they're hollow. It appears that they were cast. It appears that these are, it's just the natural explanation for these as one example of a technology, or that they were made to be buried with a king and again, if you pick up something 1,000 years after you use it, maybe you did bury it with somebody. Maybe it did have a ritualistic meaning that was very important. In 1,000 years, you and I can go do yoga at Chernobyl. It's still Chernobyl, but you can feel real tingly about doing yoga in it in 1,000 years, but it's not the original purpose.
I got a question for you from Red in our chat room, who is asking, if this is all the case with the stones and the soil and everything, what do you think happened to builders like those of Stonehenge? Where did they go? Or is it a portal of some sort?
Oh, I love that because, again, you get fascinated. Stonehenge is really popular. It's a super fun one to look at. There's a Stonehenge, though, in Libya. And there's some others in eastern Ukraine, and they are huge and they are bigger. And when we look at Stonehenge, I want to point that out because, again, I think as a Western Hemisphere person, we are so drawn to Western stories. Something happened in the East, but it wasn't central to us, or something happened in South America, but it came later. But that's not what we're seeing. And so with Stonehenge, you have a structure that you have to, this is a fun one. Go to the library, look online, do everything you can to find the oldest sketches and images of Stonehenge. Find what modern people found before modern archaeologists in the last 100 years rebuilt Stonehenge to look like what they wanted Stonehenge to look like. And you're about to all get another train, so I apologize.
Excellent.
So
excellent.
Right now, though,
hold on. You got to at least put your hand out, try and get the conductor to blow his horn for us.
Actually, I think they can. I might be able to catch the next one. I can go out there for you.
We're going to have to try this. We are totally going to have to try this next time.
I will. But yeah, the Stonehenge thing, what's interesting first about that, there's so many great points to make on this, because part of it is about looking at it and saying, okay, well, this is what Stonehenge looked like. Well, no, this is what some archaeologists in the last 100 years said. This is what Stonehenge looks like, and this is how we're going to rebuild it, and this is how we're going to repair it. And people get interested in it, and then they notice like there was a concrete repair on one of the stones, and then there's aerials now, LiDAR, that's showing that there's other henges around Stonehenge itself. Stonehenge is my perfect example of a 1,000-year-old Chernobyl. It's megalithic in its building. It has megalithic notching. It has extreme weathering that it shows that that the rounding of its corners of the blocks that were used show an antiquity that goes so beyond what we look at that structure and say, well, the mystical druids and what happened last couple thousand. Again, it's a perfect example of it was a sacred place for a couple thousand years to a different group of people, and in that time frame, or in the last 10,000 years, are hunter-gatherers, because you have to completely ignore Göbekli Tepe and everything that, and by the way, there's like 6 tepes, and we've only dug up 5% of them. So here we are with Stonehenge, something that we think has been well researched and established, and there is LiDAR that shows that there's not only other henges, but there are stones that are original to Stonehenge that were not placed back in place. And of those, like the standing stones, we call them standing stones, like in Karnak in France. There are enough related large megalithic stones that were left, I think, from these polygonal constructions from what was once a much more ancient society that just got repurposed. And so for Stonehenge to be on, when people start talking ley lines and energies and our modern interpretations of that is
Yes.
Stonehenge. Yeah, Stonehenge is in that. Stonehenge is part of that. But
all right, I'm going to get you to hold on to that thought. We'll come back with Stonehenge with author Jared Murphy next on Spaced Out Radio. Stay tuned. Dude, I'll be back in 2 seconds here. I just got to get up and open a window. About 2 minutes ago, my dog farted big time in the room here. And honestly, I'm about to puke here. Hold on. Oh, my God, Doug. You are terrible. Oh, you are terrible. Terrible. Oh, man. I thought you were a good dog. Oh, man. Hopefully that airs out quick.
That's terrible.
I was almost puking. Like in no class. He's just kind of lying there doing his thing, right? Like, yeah, who cares?
Wow. Blame it on dinner?
Yeah, I'm going to have to. Or I might just have to kill him. One of the two.
How old is he now?
10. He doesn't care.
Nope. Sounds like he's probably done it to you before.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he's rude that way.
What about the other one?
He's upstairs.
So when you said it's, how are you doing for temperature right now? How cold is it?
Let me find out here. We'll get an update here. What's the temperature? Right now it is 17 Fahrenheit or -8 degrees.
Oh, well, we're having a heat wave then. I don't think it's going to go below the 40s. I think, although Minnesota's known for a couple of freezing storms in the middle of April, or I don't know, it's a little neurotic. Well, go from freezing to 100% humidity and 90 degrees in 2 days, and then back.
Yeah. Hey, we set a record in our YouTube chat tonight with 76 people. That's our new record.
Oh, nice.
And somebody donated to the super chat there. I got to go back and try and find this. Oh, Fapster. Hey, Fap, thank you so much, man. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Sweet. That's awfully kind of you, man. And make sure, hey, Fap, make sure if Grandma Rose is tuned in tomorrow night that you let me know so we could give Grandma Rose a shout out. Grandma Rose is, I believe she's 96 years old, 94 years old or something like that. And she sits around with one of our listeners who watches her on the weekend and they tune into the show. So we got she's our oldest fan.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, it is. It's fantastic. I love it.
My aunt is almost 80 and she's been reading my book. And according to my mother, she is highlighting and has questions, but she has been digging through it and loving every second.
That is awesome.
I know. I think all this is, I think we're all contributing. We're all citizen scientists. We're literally living on this giant archaeological pile.
We could be.
Well, it goes down to the things you're seeing. It has to. There's got to be a unified theory. So you've seen things that it's not just this random strange. It connects. All of it connects. Everyone's seeing a piece of it here and there. It's just putting it together.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I fully agree. We got about 2.5 minutes here.
Oh, great. So you said the
Yeah.
bottom. You said you do the what's that news feed that you do at the third hour?
Oh, we find a bunch of weird, strange news that's been going on, and then we read the stories off. We're supposed to get flurries of snow the next 2 days. This sucks.
That doesn't count in the strange category.
No, but I'm tired of snow. I can tell you that. Totally tell you that.
One more time to snowshoe. Do you partake in any of the downhill skiing or miserable cross country skiing?
My knees are too bad and shot. I did try horseshoeing last year, and my knees just really struggled. I've torn both the ACLs and MCLs in both my knees. Yeah, so it's not a comforting feeling.
Which is why you had to get a snowmobile in. No?
I wish. I wish. No, I'll just put the vehicle in 4x4 and go out and look for Bigfoot or something.
There's always times they think they can be left alone, but with the right with the right track.
Very true. Very true. All right, one sec here. What are you looking at, farter? All right. Had to close the window.
Oh, well, it did clear out.
Yeah, finally. Okay, bud, we got about 30 seconds here. And
Sounds good.
Then we're off and running. All right. Hey, everybody, I wanted to say thank you for tuning us in on YouTube tonight. It's our biggest crowd ever on here so far. That's awesome. Give us a thumbs up if you don't mind. The super chat is open. And if you're looking to support this show, you can always subscribe to this channel as well. If you don't mind, go to our website, spacedoutradio.com/shop. Pick yourself up a t-shirt as well. Here comes the second half of Spaced Out Radio. All right, my friend, music's on. We passed the halfway point of Spaced Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott, sitting in the captain's chair of SOR headquarters. Thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate you spending your time with us. Also want to remind you that if you want to check out our free archives, you can do so at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Just do old Davey the favor. Hit that subscribe button. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including Rockin' Out to Bumblefoot and reading up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire. Tonight we are talking a little bit of ancient aliens, ancient technology. Where did we come from? Where did we go? Where did we come from? Cotton-Eyed Joe. Jared Murphy is our guest tonight. He's got a great book out. You can find it on Amazon or Google called It's Not Aliens, Worse, It's Us, Discovering Our Lost History. Jared, welcome back to the show, man.
Hey, thanks for having me, really. Truly great.
Not a problem. You know, right before the break, you were talking about Stonehenge and what you believe happened there. What do you think is going on there?
Yeah, it's a great example of something we've all been able to look at and focus on. And what's happened with Stonehenge, I think, is a good representation of the way we've been looking at our interpretation of history. And one, it's been proven very recently in the last couple, definitely in the last 2.5 years, which is really, really current, to show that there are other henges, other circles that are dating or predating Stonehenge in that area. They're larger, they're as big. I pointed out there's one in Libya, but going to Libya is a hard thing to do. And again, they have a henge, a very, very big one, very complex one. There's some in Ukraine and Eastern Europe, and they're dating to the same periods. And I know everyone's very excited about Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, And there's not just one tepe, there's at least 6 that have been looked at for about 40 years. And they have giant stone megalithic pillars with, again, kind of rubble built up between them. But we're not sure because we've only dug up 5%. And at Stonehenge, we have a site that's been interpreted and then reinterpreted. And in the last 100 years, it's been rebuilt to what they thought, well, this is what it must have looked like, or these stones fit together and they work. And so what we have is, again, a modern archaeological interpretation of what Stonehenge should look like. And they pieced it back together. And then what we've done, particularly with the way we communicate now between television and radio and stories, we've been able to create and build a modern, almost new mythology or anthropology of it by telling new stories about, well, we have this impression, this is what Stonehenge looked like 1,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago. We've taken this modern, and again, I'm talking about the last 100 years or from post 1750, 80s-ish, that we have this henge that has been rebuilt because everyone scratched their heads and really came up with this. Yeah, this is very much what Stonehenge looked like. But there's, again, the materials that are left are just the stones, and of those, some of them show antiquity that is not weathering that would have happened over the time frame that it's been given. And with the other henges that have been found by Stonehenge, and again, the stones aren't there, the footings are, and therefore probably the foundational packing materials are. And the questions have to be, in reference to an ancient, lost, high technology society, are these structures, are these materials of what you're calling Stonehenge, are they materials that are left over or moved from the other henges that had fallen down, which again are possibly remnants of an ancient high technology society? Or are these things that are possibly from a mimic culture? That's the other part. It's like the dynastic Egyptians or the Greeks. Are these strictly from a society that has seen the pieces of the other henges or Stonehenge, and in the last 2, 3, 4, 5, 6,000 years, did they stack them back up and have, again, we have this legit, beautiful Neolithic nomadic history of, and then right up through the Druids and Christianity, we have this history of Stonehenge that is super mysterious, super interesting. King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table. There's so many interesting histories that we place on Stonehenge and say, okay, well, here's what it must have been. And then the idea directly, is it an energy center that's a portal or a communication center? Just like the Nazca lines, again, that it's kind of the same thing where you have a mimic culture coming along and placing butterflies and figures on top of non-variation 25-kilometer long lines. And there's not just Nazca lines in Peru. The Nazca lines, if some people aren't familiar, these are super long straight lines that are in Earth that is the most arid. Not even Antarctica is as arid as this due to its cold. There's less than a ½ inch of rain. You can scratch the dirt where the Nazca lines are, and it will literally be there for tens of thousands of years. It will never go away. And what's never talked about in reference to high technology, and Eric von Daniken has to get the credit for this, is that there is drainage pipes that are actually, there's piping systems that go into the Andes, but there are, if there was enough rain for the Nazca lines to be affected, there's drains. And that's not a subject people want to talk about. Or why are the Nazca lines themselves have traces of arsenic? And we're not just talking from acid rain or over thousands of years. We're talking that these are lines that look like geocircuits. So in reference to Stonehenge, is this entire system that was built, when you look at a global map, when you look at where the coastlines would have been 50 or 60 or 80,000 years ago, when you look at where the Bimini Road would have been a road, and Indonesia would have had the same thing above above water, and the Jakarta pyramid was in full bloom, and all the tepes in Turkey were not stacked with rubble in between the megalithic posts. What are we looking at for? What are we doing
Hey,
for?
you got the police coming for you there, or some sort of
I
alien ship?
Yeah. Well, I'd like to credit it to that, but I'm going to give it to the fan that decided to go ballistic, and I now killed it. So if everybody wants to know, that was a.
Dude, I gave you the perfect opportunity to tell everybody that aliens were coming.
Oh, dang it! I didn't tee that one up right. You teed it up right, and I just blew it. They know that I'm telling the truth, and this is the last you'll hear from
Yes.
me. And everybody get the book.
Do you have tinfoil? Do you have tinfoil?
I have not come prepared. Aliens now are classy. They'll go with a biodegradable plastic.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah, that'll also work. They're saving the earth, or at least we're.
There you go. There you go.
So, yeah, I think these structures, and I wanted to bring Nazca into it in reference to the idea of a portal, the idea of an energy center like Stonehenge, because these other henges and these other circles, we need to, as Westerners, and in our stories that we've been telling ourselves from King Arthur on, and the Druids and the mystical, everything that's all Western worldy, we need to pay close attention to henges around the world, including the ones that are in, again, Eastern Europe, the stuff that's being found, like those nanotechnology pieces that were found in the 90s in Eastern Siberia, where you have gold machined nanostructures that haven't been studied since the professor who was looking at them died. It's in the book, but it's a known subject where you have these lines, the Nazca lines specifically, again, where they are long lines. Forget about the shapes and the structures. That's like graffiti. That's graffiti on top of a mother circuit board. It's like somebody spray painted on your computer circuit board, but they gouged it in. And what you have is, when you take away the monkeys and the shapes and the spirals and everything's a special sacred thing. Everything is a ritual. Nothing was practical. When we look at paleoanthropological research, I love everything's a fertility goddess. Nothing was functional and practical. It was all just there for, the Great Pyramids are not an energy structure, or Menkaure. They're just tombs, and we can all go there. But the Nazca lines are not alone. There's other lines in Bolivia. There's lines in Jordan. There's lines all over the earth. But the key thing about these lines is that some of them are 25 kilometers long. And then what happened? Were they terraformed over with a post-flood culture where they washed away in a flood? Why are there these lines that show traces of arsenic, plumbing for drainage issues? Why maintain these unless they have electromagnetic properties, which Eric von Daniken, when I got a chance to meet with him and talk to him about this a couple of years ago, they did some experimentation with electromagnetic and current work with the Nazca lines. So are we looking at we're looking at, if you can engineer soil for growing and filtering air, and you can work with cymatic, polygonal, and frequency and wave technology, is it really that far out for an ancient high technology society to say, we're just going to have not only terra preta be electromagnetic and move communications? Why not just do earth circuits? And here's the indications for it. And there are locations where they seem to be on, there are structures like Stonehenge that seem to be on these energy lines. But the idea that it was a mystical or an unplanned or an untangible technology that goes into this mystical realm, I think that's a very beautiful post-flood way for us at 7 to 15% consciousness to go, yeah, that makes sense. Not if you follow with evolution and say, okay, well, we only get something through a forced adaptation if we have 100% brain capacity, and we were all had synesthesia and could sense, touch, and feel every sound, smell, conversation, and dialogue, that we could actually communicate. Part of that lost ancient technology isn't just in the soil and the things we've been touching on. It's in our genetic and our abilities to communicate to each other directly. What's that? Why do we have a third eye? Really, it's just this thing that we painted in the middle of our head? It's a dot, a ritualistic dot that we place? Or did we have a pineal gland that, with the ocular nerve endings in it, were we once fully conscious? Were we able to communicate directly with another human being? And with synesthesia, there's different versions. There's chromesthesia. There's a way where you can see colors, and you could perceive, you could see, there's different ways you could smell something and see a number. There's distance. There's, imagine being a stone, an ancient high technology civil engineer, and you could cut the polygonal cymatic construction by listening to your favorite music, because every musical note you heard showed you a shape that you had to cut for the very next portion of stone that you had to use. And different abilities like synesthesia, which again, it affects all five senses. Modern science says that 20% of us have these abilities, but some people have an instant once, where maybe they experienced one sensation. There are different abilities. Some people with this, they have one format of it. They can, every time if you say the word yellow, they might see or they add two numbers together and they see a color, or they smell something but hear music, or vice versa. They hear music and see colors, or dimensional, like you could say one form of it, you could say 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and literally in the air, not in their mind, but in front of their face, they would see numbers that would start farther away and come closer. And we chalk this and other genetic abilities, or the idea that we've lived past lives, or genetic, we have these regressions, and the idea that our genetic material itself could possibly be a storage for our past as an entire race, that we have the ability to not just remember or store past events or capabilities, but that we have this consciousness that we're unaware of now, because we're basically in safe mode. We don't, if evolution as a theory is correct, we don't end up at 7 to 14% consciousness unless at some point we forced our brains, or we designed or developed our brains to be what they are now, which even the best neurosurgeons in the world, I have some experience with this, they hold up their pinky and they say, this is about, just for the point, they've literally held up their pinky and gone, this is what we know about the human brain right now. And that's why looking at synesthesia and past life regressions, for instance, or those the idea of a common human consciousness, these are not some out there ideas that are to be adapted light, or to be chalked up to mystical ideas lightly. These are windows into abilities, I think, that people like Wim Hof, the Iceman, who holds 26 world records, who has been proven to consciously control his immune system, who I had the opportunity to meet when he came to America, and people like Stig Severinsen, also another Netherlands guy that's broken a number of records, been on many TED Talks and Discovery Channel as a superhuman, who held his breath for 22 minutes comfortably on one breath, because the breathing techniques are not there to astound, but the idea that every medical textbook says you cannot consciously control your immune system, your inflammatory response. Yet Wim Hof has trained thousands of people to do it. I'm able to do it. I've been practicing for 4 years. And it's about these connections that we're rebooting, that we're re-remembering, that we're getting close again to realizing that we're part of a global community of not just, right? It's not just this one element of our past being in our past. We're living fossils. We're living representations of, we're not just, it's not to be depressing or to say, oh, well, we're just not what we used to be, or things were better when, or it's the complexity of what we're finding technologically in the ground, in union with practices that we're rediscovering and remembering, show that we are, again, we're not the result of evolutionary losers or by accident. It seems to be, like many portions of the planet, a level of design and intent. And I don't mean given to us or provided for us. I mean a level of an intent and design that, because of multiple wars or disasters or a surviving group of highly advanced humans not sharing, we are now, as a group, collectively picking up enough pieces and able, through YouTube and a lot of other things, communicate that we are connecting enough of the dots back together that it's not just strange, it's beautiful and wonderful that we might be able to stave off disease and actually tune ourselves and actually connect back, not in some just a untangible spiritual way, but that we actually did design and can communicate and connect with the planet itself, because we once were that. And these pieces, each piece is coming together to show us that we might have been that together. And at some point it fell and broke, and now there's a disconnect.
Right. We only got about 4 minutes here before we got to go to break. And Cable Guy Matt is asking if you have researched anything to do with Puma Pumka.
Yeah. Here we are with, yet again, I mentioned geopolymers just for a hot second. Joseph Davidovits, the father of geopolymers, so that whole area, and I know it's a super popular thing for a number of alternative researchers, this whole area, it's impossible to not be fascinated with it, because you have polygonal cymatic construction, you have andesite and basalt, you have blocks of quartzites, you have stones that no Incan, Mayan, Toltec, Olmec, whatever you want to point out in South America, Latin America, Central America, as far south as, Clovis people, whoever you want to chalk it up to, that we are identifying through modern, standard academia. These people did not build polygonal cymatic constructions, and again, highly engineered advanced super soils, and then put little pebbles and rocks to finish off their buildings on top of polygonal constructions that, mind you, most of those stones were taken from, some of them they've identified the quarry, some of them they're still not sure. And no matter what, to get them up and down and moved and where they put them, it's ridiculous. The stories that you would have to rely on for Victorian and many to say that this was technology that was produced in the last 500 or 800 or 1,000 or 1,500 years is silly. And Dr. Joseph Davidovits, the father of geopolymers, the accreditations and who this person is and what he's done, I mean, we wouldn't have modern concrete and buildings and of what geopolymers do and what they're in, from our roads to our constructions and the complexities of them. He's managed to, he wrote a whole book about geopolymers, which were then researched by local Egyptologists and some Yale, and so there was about 4 other professors, completely independent. There's geopolymer patching on the Great Pyramid, which means, was it that his theory originally was that maybe the Great Pyramid was poured. And really what it looks like is, if you're running machines that run for tens of thousands of years, every now and then, depending on a natural disaster or a weaponization or a hit or a war, perhaps it was geopolymer patched in certain areas and then repaired. And in Pumapunku and Tiwanaku and these other areas where they're finding blocks where they're saying, well, this block looks like it was poured, and his point is that this appears to be a geopolymer. That may or may not be true, and based on carbon dating, to our understanding, they're saying, well, this was a geopolymer and this block was poured 15 or 1700 years ago, and here's our papers on it, and they've done some serious work on it, and these people produce geopolymers. I think these are super serious scientists that really know what they're doing. This is great. but then you have another side to it. These H blocks, some of the areas of what they're finding are fragments of what the superstructures were that are there. And here's the crazy thing. This whole area is in 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 feet of mud. And you'll see a researcher like Brian Forrester or all the guys from Ancient Aliens that as a separate group, not throwing Brian or anyone in one group or another, just that you have footage after footage of these, that whole area, that whole Latin America, that whole area from Lake Titicaca, all the famous sites from, things in the Ollantaytambo to Pumapunku,
Right.
all of them, Machu Picchu.
I'm going to get you to hold on right there as we have Jared Murphy for another 30 minutes. His new book, It's Not Aliens, Worse, It's Us. More about ancient discoveries next on Spaced Out Radio. Perfect hour, man. Perfect hour.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
It's cool stuff, man.
Yeah, man. You helped us break a record. We had 79 people listening in on YouTube. That's our new record. 79. We're at 73 right now.
Oh, that's awesome. I'll come back. We'll do it again.
All right. I'm just going to run my dog outside. I got to get him out of here. He farted again, and it's terrible. So I'm just going to put the commercials on and air out this place. I'll be right back.
Okay. Sounds great.
All right, I'm back.
All right.
That's going to be awesome, man.
Yeah, did you the doggy go in lockdown?
Oh yeah, he went good night, man. I had to put him upstairs. Take him outside quick and then put him upstairs. I can't handle that. Holy cow. No, it wasn't me who let one go, Waylon. Jesus. I'd admit
no one to blame. I used to have a 140-pound bloodhound that looked like Scooby-Doo.
Yeah, that's pretty harsh. Pretty harsh.
Especially when they fart.
Oh, it's terrible. It's terrible. All right, we've got about a minute or so, about a minute and a half or so. Hi, Sandra. Hi, Sandra. Hi, Sandra. All right. Poetically mistaken. If you can't handle a Doug fart, how can you expect to handle a Sasquatch fart? I don't know. I don't know.
Maybe they don't admit to farting.
Who knows? Who knows? All right. I think we're going to be... Yeah, we got about 45 seconds or so.
And I got my next train.
Perfect. Perfect.
Can't really argue with them. I can't really yell at them when it's after, where we at? 1:10 a.m.
Yeah, no kidding.
No one's supposed to be listening to them.
Yeah, you're supposed to be in bed. K.A. says, please say hi to Jared from Carrie Ann. Please.
Hello. That would be a shout out from California.
Well, I appreciate tooting on in. Hi, Carrie Ann. I'm Dave. Here we go. All right, music's on. Hour 3 of Spaced Out Radio coming up next. We are underway in the third and final hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Hi to everyone listening in on our terrestrial affiliates all across the United States. We will soon be adding Saga 960 in Mississauga, Ontario, as of Monday. Very, very proud of that. On the digital side, we're proud to broadcast on Revolution Radio. Remember, you can check out all of our archives for free at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Just do old Davey the favor and hit that subscribe button. The Desert Clam has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Let me just find it here. It is Cats and Jammer. Cats and Jammer is your password. Use it wisely, space travelers, as the Clam sets the password each and every night right here on Spaced Out Radio. Our website is spacedoutradio.com. We got a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to Bumblefoot and reading up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire. For the final time tonight, we introduce our guest. We have Jared Murphy. He's got a great book out called It's Not Aliens, Worse. It's us, discovering our lost history. And Jared, welcome back to the show. Really appreciate you taking the time for us tonight.
Oh, thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah, and all your followers like Carrie Ann who are hanging on out in the chat rooms listening to you. And thank you so much to all the new people checking us out as well. For the first time, we always do appreciate new listeners around here. Jared, you know, we talk about a lot and we hear it on television about ancient aliens and if there has been any sort of working together with ancient societies to build the pyramids or Stonehenge or other places on this planet that just don't seem justifiably and humanly possible. Have you ever noticed or in your research been able to find out if there is any truth to that?
Yeah, I think the short answer is it's all post flood mythologies. You know, it's the Anunnaki. They reference that they came here from Nibiru, and or I guess as far as it being true, again, and it's you have to reference a post flood mythology, whether it's the Egyptian or the Greek, and then. And again, this really does partially go back to Eric von Daniken and Chariots of the Gods. And I mean, what a great course it sets us on to say, well, you know, what if there's the theory of it being just that, you know, well, something crashed and here's an ancient piece of high technology and we must have had some assistance. And it never starts out with, well, hold on, we have lots of ancient cities and coastlines that are gone, but it's pretty clear that we've been here and the weathering on this cymatic polygonal construction shows to be tens of thousands of years old. And could we have easily launched a ship or mini ships or satellites and right now there's dead or orbiting satellites at altitudes that are not ones we put satellites at? And are they actually ancient? And are the people that we say were visitors? It all goes back to that paradigm shift because it was impossible to believe that we are not as advanced as we are now, that this is it. We are the furthest along that we've ever been, but genetically, the soil, what we're finding in the structures, Pumapunku, geopolymers, ancient geopolymers that are like Teflon and they're underwater and they don't collect barnacles in the Mediterranean Bay, and we don't know how to make it. And it's not ancient Roman. I mean, we have too much to look at and say, again, it's the easy jump. It literally, it's easy to get your brain around it and go, well, aliens helped us. It's such an easy thing to then what we're finding does not add up to, well, people in loincloths did not do that. No, they didn't. But then the idea that turns it turned my stomach. It's like butterflies. It's, oh my God, we are actually the remnants we have rebuilt from a truly highly advanced society. These people live differently, they connected differently, and what we have left are the stories and legends and myths, the slivers of truths, and we're templating our beliefs off of these post-flood mythologies, whether it's a religion or just a theoretical touchback to what are our origins, because it's hard to let go of you, me, everything that we've grown up with, the legends and stories and the interpretations and the fun we've had with that through movies and music and these paradigms, where if you drop them all and you just look at the facts on the ground, not the theories, don't make the theories fit the facts, look at the facts, and they show highly advanced things do. And when you break down each of these pieces, like the H blocks at Pumapunku that, you know, we touched on before the break, which, you know, there's only 6, but it's because ancient peoples quarried the site and they took many of the things, but yet there's layers of mud and we've never excavated it. Why is it not excavated? Unless you want to jump into modern conspiracies and say, well, we're not looking at it because, well, it's going to tell a different story. And that story is not that aliens helped us. It's, again, in 1,000 years, if you dig up Chernobyl or you dig up the Apple headquarters, what are you going to find? And what are you going to say? What's the story you're going to tell about it? You can tell any story you want. You can talk all about the grand last 1,000 years of what it was used for, but that's not what it was used for from 1,000 years and further back. The H blocks at Pumapunku are a great example. Uh, there was some theories from an ancient alien standpoint that, well, one of the things they point out about the H blocks, they look like H's, but that they slide and connect together. But as Brian Forrester pointed out, they're not identical. Each H block is different, but they look cast or machined. And Christopher Dunn, the engineer, he's written about this and studied there also. And there's weird magnetic properties, like they almost lock together like magnets, but they were different in size. But that might be because each block is from a different portion of a different part of the building. And did aliens have to help us build a building, or is it just a building? And because we don't know how to, our minds go from trying to comprehend what we're looking at genetically. Chicken before an egg. You literally can't have a chicken before an egg. You have to engineer a society that can control or create the Paracas people with elongated skulls and manipulate the human body. They certainly can, like Kurzweil's The Singularity is Near. We can manipulate genes. We're on track to do that. We've been doing it since 2008. Nanotechnology, cloning, but more specifically, customizing anything to have a purpose or a job, and to change what humans look like, to shift from saying this giant, massive ancient structure in society had help from abroad, to simply getting your head around and comprehend that we are not as advanced as we were. We're operating at 7 to 15% brain capacity, yet we have this massive, the one-time evolution gifts human beings with an extra big brain, or we already forced the adaptation or created the adaptation deep, deep, deep in our past, and we have now fallen. And you look back at what we're looking at then, at these technologies and these in-ground evidences and below-ground evidences, and you either have to say, to make yourself calm down a little, well, aliens helped us, versus, well, the only other thing that could have happened is somehow we knew how to work with obsidian and not break it and make it into finely structured things. Or at Saqqara in Egypt, everyone talks about, one of the things people point out is we found 40,000 vases in Saqqara in the step pyramid. The thing they don't point out is that these vases are machined. That, well, they'll point out that they're machined, but rarely does someone stay engaged enough in vases where they get to the part where they tell you that this is some of the hardest and some of the most fragile stones with crystal structures in them, where if one blade was to lathe the vase, which they're lathed, okay, so they're machined so well that they're perfect on the outside and the inside, and whatever blade cut them out of a solid block, if they had done one little hook on one little crystal at one little level, it would have shattered it. And some of these vases are so thin, they're translucent. They're intentionally translucent. Some of the hardest and most delicate stones on earth, cut to perfection to be translucent for funsies. This is a really highly advanced society, and we're rediscovering it as we're going. And it has been so easy for us to go from, I think it's been hard for us to go, wow, I just can't fathom that we blew it all up or that we lost it. That's a hard one to get around. There's a lot of different layers to this, and I think it's going to all take us some time as citizen scientists, as experimenters. I think all of us need to put our eyes on what we see in our deep genetic memory. Everyone will have a different memory of, no matter what it is and no matter what your interest level is, just looking at the things that are found and asking and helping archaeologists get funded so that Tiwanaku, or that Pumapunku, and these places that are sitting in 60 feet of mud can have the money to dig. And instead of trying to stick with finding evidence and then throwing out anything that doesn't fit with the theory, throwing out facts and putting vases together for 30 years because they don't actually want to excavate ancient Disney World together ripped up tickets at the ticket counter. Meanwhile, we're LiDARing 40,000 buildings and pyramids throughout Guatemala in just 800 square miles. And that's a fraction of what we're finding as we're, i.e., deforesting the natural untouched rainforest, and we're finding megalithic structures and cities and these assumptions we're making with like Göbekli Tepe. With only 5% dug up, we're making massive assumptions. We're templating the sites to our current theories rather than letting the facts speak. And that's why we jump to aliens. And more importantly, people are seeing aliens. This is the part that we're not actually discussing, is that there are too many over the last 80 years, from the battle over Los Angeles. I mean, we could go on, we could hit up the alien crowd, and we can go with eyewitness accounts, and no one's going to take away from these incredibly reasonable human beings who have truly seen. Yeah, there's a whole segment, shout out to Olav and Phillips, my publisher, and Anomalies and Paranoia magazine. There is definitely military technology. There are definitely governments experimenting with anti-gravity. Yes, there's a portion of the UFOs we are seeing that are military, but then there's a whole bunch of others that are not explainable in any capacity by our modern military, or even if they're 100 years ahead, they're not explainable. The beings, the people that are seeing what they're seeing, the assumption is, well, they don't look like me, so they're alien. Wait, again, think nose job, but think genetic nose job. Changing gene structures, interdimensional space traveling, nanoparticle controlling human beings can change how they look. They may or may not, based on Ray Kurzweil's book, The Singularity is Near, choose to have a body even. There's a good chance that we might be able to exist in a non-organic, diamondoid, crystalloid, basically a non-bio cellular structure. And that means that when you're looking at and projecting that, well, this flying saucer, little white gray guy, well, he's not from around here. Well, if you're traveling interdimensionally, maybe if you want to see the upright displays and process traveling at 0-point turns at multi-dimensional speeds, perhaps being small, white, and gray with giant eyes with skin that's translucent that can see and take in data, and you can process it at the same time or as collective as a group, there's more bioengineering in there that makes that the way you need to look or appear for the travels and adventures and the things you're doing as a human. And so that's why we have to stop, look at what the facts are showing us, that a highly advanced group of humans once lived here or still do. And some of them, here's the last part of this, it's a cruise ship, this ancient high-tech society, and there's only one cruise ship left, and that cruise ship crashes. The guy who bartends makes it, but the guy who made all the booze, no one knows how to make booze anymore. The guy who can program a laptop or a phone, an Android, or a modern smartphone, he makes it, but the guy who programs the navigation system doesn't. The guy who who can machine tools, he lives, but the guy who actually knows how to build a foundry, he doesn't. So you have a highly advanced group of humans that may or may not have been in hiding through multiple disasters or one big one, come out of hiding or come into a world where they have to recollect technologies throughout the world or throughout this disaster or over maybe multiple generations, and they come out. And the dynastic Egyptians, the Greeks, the Incas, the Mayans, the Toltecs, the people in Indonesia, ancient peoples that we identify as ancient cultures, are adapted and squatting, sitting, rebuilding, reimagining these ancient structures that they've reoccupied. And the idea that at one point there was a cohesive ancient society that got their asses handed in one way or the other, and that they cohesively left and didn't have conflict. There are things in our histories, which maybe we don't have time for right now, that like the battle over Nuremberg, that it was the lithograph from the 1500s of these stars and shapes and things shooting at each other in the sky that was witnessed by people who lived in Nuremberg, Germany in 1517-ish. Everybody can correct me on the date, but the point is that, is it possible that there's a group that it was humans all along that made it, that some of them did not get along with each other, and some of them said, screw it, we couldn't make it work, like the Paracas, and said, we're the world's first Quakers. We're moving to the beach. We're going to be fishermen. We're really good with textiles. We're not picking up the old ways. Screw it, we're going to live it out and live on the beach, and we're now the Paracas, and we're going to live here with our elongated skulls and call it a day. We left Crimea, and that's how our story is going to end. So we have to be very leery of taking any post-flood theory based on our modern theories, based on these post-flood stories, and say, wow, you know what, there's something solid there, and I'm going to template my view of each of these sites. When you're looking at an ancient high-tech cruise ship and you're saying that, well, it's not that, aliens helped us just move the girder, but I'm not going to call it a girder. I'm just going to call it a henge and a standing stone. I'm not going to call it a super ancient weathered cymatic polygonal stone that got stacked in a row because somebody did that 5,000 years ago after finding a pile of well-cut, piled up building, and they repurposed it. I'm going to call it a standing stone, and I'm going to call this a henge because there's no more wood, there's no more plastic, there's no more stone. And, well, isn't that funny about these genetic anomalies? But let's not have a full genetic map of the human race or a full paleoanthropological record. Let's just jump to a lot of conclusions and dust our hands and say we got it figured out. And this is the adventure. This is the fun of it. Unfortunately, we have enough on the ground to know that this highly advanced ancient society did exist, but who survived?
Right.
That's another question.
We've got about 3 minutes here with you tonight, and this is a show that has flown on by, and I really appreciate it. How does this affect our future, where we go from here?
Oh, yeah, that's a great one, because there's a lot to get your head around, and I've spent a lot of time on it. What do you do with our ancient relatives that don't want to talk to us, or that have been abducting people or showing up or accidentally being seen? Why don't they help? Why don't they really help? Are they really helping? Are they giving us little shoves? And what do we know for sure? Well, we know that we have I think as collectively as a race goes, we have a history of killing each other for our beliefs, and I think that has to stop, and not just to be we need to be collectively a human race that knows that we are all connected, quite literally, genetically, physically, and that this planet, that in safe mode, we deserve to know where not only we're from, but that we are sleeping genetically with technology that makes us each potentially superhuman, not indestructible, but able to control our inflammatory system like Wim Hof or Stig Severinsen, and we can do that, and that we can live younger and healthier and maybe connect on these higher levels, not just in a mystical way, but truly we actually likely were. So in studying this ancient high technology past and applying it in not just through healthy diet, but positive gene expression because of healthy diet and exercise and these adaptations that we're rediscovering, like WIM. But then with this historical piece, in the future, why would we be fighting over our post-flood beliefs, skirting around the religious issue? The issue is, it's not an issue. If you know where you're from, it doesn't need to change those beliefs, but at the same time, we need to look at the facts of where we are from to also apply now and be calm and know that we are a very strong and powerful species that isn't just a random accident, that we aren't just we don't have to stay in sleep mode. We don't, I mean literal safe mode, that we can reactivate and readapt and reconnect in a very realistic way to these technologies that are not just ones we hold in our hand, but they're literally in our brain and genes that allow us to communicate, connect, avoid disasters like earthquakes, and possibly have some pretty spectacular devices, which we haven't been able to get to.
Right. Jared, I want to say thank you so much for coming on Spaced Out Radio tonight, talking about your book, It's Not Aliens, Worse, It's Us, Discovering Our Lost History. What a pleasure to have you on here tonight, my friend. Thank you.
Oh, I appreciate it so much. I thank you and all your listeners, and I'm so glad it turned out to be such a great night. I really appreciate you having me on.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Everybody, stick around. We have the SOR Newswire and the Thought of the Day coming on up on Spaced Out Radio next. Stay tuned.
All right.
All right, buddy. That was awesome. Great show. Great show. Thank you so much for coming on, man.
You're welcome. I'm was really excited to come on. It was a really great time, and it just flew by.
Yeah, totally, man. Totally. We learned a lot tonight, man. And I want to appreciate you and your followers coming on the YouTube channel and checking us on out. And that's really cool. I hope we earn some more listeners that way. And that's part of the reason why we do it, too. And I look forward to it. I'm going to be speaking to Olav after the show, and I'm going to tell him what a great guy you are as well. So thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. It was really a great time.
All right, brother. I'll let you get some sleep.
You have a great rest of your show.
You too. Take care.
Yep, you too. Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.